Hey folks, Nick here from Another BookTube channel, and today I'll be reviewing The Fires of Heaven by Robert Jordan. This is book 5 in the Wheel of Time. This is part of my Wheel of Time reread series, so this is my second time through the series, and I am going to be talking about this book pretty much spoiler-free, but I will be referencing the previous books as though you are familiar with them. So be mindful of that before you proceed with this review. And up to this point in my reread, I've been really impressed by just how much Robert Jordan was really laying the groundwork and foundation for the later part of the series early on. Because I've said it in my other reviews, the first time reading it, I was just focused on getting the essentials down, to understand what was happening, to keep my head above water. So a lot of little stuff floated past me. But now, books 1 through 4 in the reread, I'm loving them. Like, even more than I enjoyed them the first time. And I knew that at a certain point, that wasn't going to be sustainable, because there is, after book 4, that part of the series where everybody says, like, it's not really as good up until the end again. Like, that middle after book 4 up until book 11, book 11 is where it gets really, really great again. The first time I read Fires of Heaven, I remember liking it a lot. And I think I gave it like 5 stars on my Goodreads when I first rated it. This time around, I was pretty disappointed in this book. It'll probably be the biggest, maybe the biggest grade drop that I've given a book during this reread, throughout the reread. And I'll talk a little bit about why. I still liked this book, but there's a lot that I think could have been cut out of it, and I'll get into it now. So, in terms of a broad strokes plot synopsis, let's see, where's Rand right now? Rand is still in the Aiel Waste. He has, in the previous book, basically, he has done what he was prophesied to do, which was unite the Aiel and destroy the Aiel. He revealed the truth of their history, in which it was revealed that they used to follow the way of the leaf, and then they betrayed that, and now, they are this warrior society. And his main conflict here now is that there is another Aielman named Couladin from a rival clan, who he is claiming that he is the actual prophesied Karakarn, as the Aiel call him. So he's leading like a rebellion force next to Rand, and he's going into leading out his people out of the waste, and they're just going to try to conquer the country and the continent in the name of the Aiel. So now Rand has to deal with that going on. Nynaeve and Elayne, they are kind of on the run away from the Black Aja. They were hunting them down in the last book. They made their presence known. They got away with some very important knickknacks, and now they're trying to get back to the White Tower, not realizing that in the previous book, the White Tower was there was a rift, and the Amelin seat, Swan Sanche, was deposed and stilled and escaped with Min, and ran away. Those two storylines are what take up the majority of the Fires of Heaven, particularly the first 650 pages. And that's really why this book kind of fails for me, because you've got your best characters are Rand, Mat, Perrin, and Egwene, in my opinion. And all of them are really pretty much sidelined for the first 650 pages of this book. There's a couple Rand chapters mixed in there, some really great moments with Avienda. There's a few moments with Egwene. Egwene has a couple really good scenes sprinkled in, but for the most part, we're not hearing from her. Mat also really good when he shows up, but very sparse. And there's no Perrin at all. Perrin's not in this book. It's 900 pages, and there's no Perrin in this book. My favorite character. Come on. So all we're left with is Nynaeve. as really the main character here. And that's a problem because I like Nynaeve a lot. And that's on its own a controversial kind of opinion. A lot of people hate Nynaeve. And I think that this book is like what solidifies that. Because up until this point, she's always been arrogant. She's always been stubborn. But she's been a side character. And her stubbornness is almost kind of funny in a way. And it can be offset with these other chapters of more important characters who are more interesting, who are interacting with her. But now she's front and center, and her only counterpart is Elayne, who's also kind of annoying in her own way. So when Nynaeve's at the forefront, everything she's doing is so unbelievably stubborn. She's so arrogant that it can get on your nerves. And I found myself really getting frustrated with her in this reading, and I can see why people can't stand her. And I think it's because this book really pushes them over the edge. And it doesn't help that when Nynaeve and Elayne are running away, trying to escape the Black Aja, they enter what is, to me, one of the weakest subplots in any of the Wheel of Time books, which is the Valen Luca menagerie. Basically, they hide out in like a traveling circus. And it takes up so much time. It takes forever. And like there's and they have to like learn to do acts to like pay their way. And there's just so much attention paid to like how they're going to do their act and what they're going to decide on. And it's just so boring. And I don't care about it. And it to me, it stops the book dead. And it's intercut with the Swan Sanche and Min chapters, who they're also on the run, and they're trying to track down the rebel Aes Sedai, the ones who did not take part in the deposing of Swan, who fled the tower and don't back Illaida as the new Amarylline seat, because they're hiding out somewhere. And those chapters are also really boring. Like, Swan is not nearly as interesting in this book. She has interesting stuff for the rest of the series, as far as I remember. But up to this point, I don't really care for her. I don't really care for Min, honestly. Min bothers me because she's in love with Rand, and she has been. She's mentioned it for the past couple books, so that's not a spoiler. And that more than anything irks me, because we've got a few characters who have fallen in love with Rand, and you could chalk it up to Ta'Veren, but those other characters like Elayne, they've at least spent a good amount of time together. Min has spent almost no time with Rand. And this is another one of those shortcomings of Robert Jordan's writing in terms of his writing of romance. I mentioned in my Shadow Rising review, there's times when he could do romance really, really well. But getting the romance started, he stinks at it. And the Min attachment to Rand just falls so flat for me. And it's frustrating because so much of the first chunk of this book, like the first 3/4 of it, are dedicated to characters that are annoying or boring or flat. Now, that being said, the back half of this book, not even back half, the back quarter or like this much of it is great. And it really saves this book in a lot of ways. I was almost, while reading this, I was like, okay, this is maybe a book that I can skip on a reread, like another reread one day down the line. And maybe that's still the case. Maybe if I come to reread this series again in the future, I'll skip the Swan chapters and I'll skip the Min chapters, and I'll just kind of put myself right in like that back quarter, because there's some great stuff in there. There are great chapters with Rand, who is still trying to get a handle on being the leader of this prophecy and of these people, of bringing the Aiel out of the waste. And Rand is trying to deal with like uniting or trying to even just get them on friendly terms, like the Aiel, the Kyrian lords, the Terran lords. So he's got a lot going on. Plus, he's still going mad from access to the One Power. Matt has some really fun moments. Matt is the best part about Matt's story, without going into spoilers, is that he is so dedicated to this outward appearance of just trying to get away from everybody. Like he's everything. He's every opportunity he gets. He's like, I am going to leave now. Like I do not want to be here. You guys do what you want to do. I'm gonna mind my own business. I'm gonna go get drunk. I'm gonna go kiss some girls, and that's it. I'm gonna go gamble. Matt knows what he's about, and he keeps getting wrangled into accidentally being a great hero and warrior and like general, because he's got these memories that were given to him in the previous book that of his past lives, and they keep coming to the forefront, and he can't get away from them. And his everything that he does is just so funny because he's just like it's completely against his will. um, so poor Matt, but I like it a lot. And Nynaeve does kind of redeem herself a little bit at the end. She has a really solid conclusion to her story arc in this particular book. Um, so it all comes together. And also, as much as I hate the menagerie storyline, I forgot how funny it was when she leaves. Because, again, won't go into it, but if you've read it, the scene with her and Val and Luca, like when they're leaving, is hysterical. I could not stop laughing at that part. I thought it was great. It almost makes the menagerie worth it, but they really could have shortened it quite a bit. Again, almost a 900-page book, and a lot of it felt just, we don't really need this. And I mean, yeah, I'm kind of out of thoughts about this one. Usually, these reviews I write out, really lengthy scripts that I can focus on and make sure I hit these important points. But not a lot of story happens in this, which I think is another problem I have with the series now that it's reached this point. Everything is happening in it feels like a couple weeks, And so Rand makes like barely any progress in his story. Nynaeve and Elayne, like they do the most in this book, but they don't go a lot of places. Perrin's absent completely. So just not a lot happens in a short amount of time. But there's stuff that's planted throughout that's going to be important. So it's hard to skip it, but also it did drag. And honestly, I haven't mentioned this in my previous reviews, but I've been using the audiobooks as supplementary material during this reread. Now, I'm on the record as not being a big audiobook fan because I can't listen to an audiobook and like lock in completely on it, and if I miss even one line, it'll turn into like me missing 10 lines and then 20, and it's just a snowball effect, and now I'm completely lost. But because I've read all of these books before, I kind of know everything that's kind of going on, so I don't need to be that strict about it, and I really leaned on the audiobook for this heavily this time. It helped me get through a lot of stretches that I otherwise would have skimmed or just like put down for like the day and not gone back to. I finished this in a week because of the audiobook. If I was not using the audiobook and I was just doing the physical copy, I would have been exhausted and I would have probably taken 3 weeks to read it because there's so many times that I'm just like, I'm not in the mood for this. This is boring. There's not enough happening. And I've said that a lot, that there's a lot of boring, not a lot happening stuff in here. I don't mean to imply that this is a bad entry in the Wheel of Time. It's just, it's not one of the strongest efforts. I like it. I think the ending is great, but this is where the series has its first major stumble, in my opinion. So my arbitrary and subjective grade for The Fires of Heaven by Robert Jordan is 6.5 out of 10. That I feel like that number feels almost high because I spoke a lot of negative things about it just now. But it's a good book. It's good. Use the audiobook. Help yourself out a little bit. Let me know your thoughts about The Fires of Heaven. Do you also think that this is kind of a stumble? Or do you think it's great? Is it one of your favorites? Let me know in the comments. I really want to hear what you have to say. Thank you very much for spending some time with me today. But now, it's time to get back to reading.